just presentation.
Oh, presentation. Gotcha. Okay.
Maybe higher?
Oh, I mean, is it something we can't do because it's not up yet? Or?
Media person did not.
My computer's been
Yeah,
acting kind of
not.
wonky, but
Let's
oh,
see
there
if
we
I
go.
just
Quit.
quit.
Touch it, David. That's all it is. Thank you.
Oh, did I?
It's one of those.
Whoops. Okay.
So what I said to
You can change it back to PC.
Oh yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I already have it turned up as loud as they can.
Are they going to move that slow?
Buffering or.
What I said to Adam was, he was like, "Well, we have more support." I said, "Adam, have you met with the neighbors? Well, kind of, sort of." I said,
Maybe the world's longest
"Some of
minute.
those people, out of the 85 people that signed that petition or whatever it was, have you pulled over?" "Oh yeah, we're working on it." You can bus a load full of people in here that are
Fair rate.
but what have you done? What have you? Anyway, we'll see what they say. But
Yeah, I'm curious.
Welcome.
a bunch of chamber people here, they're going to rally behind Dogtopia here, I guess. They're just trying to stack the deck. So. That's the point. Yeah, so there's chamber involved. Hey, gentlemen. Hey, good. Oh yeah. So we have we recruited the chamber here to support Dogtopia? Is that what's going on here? You're totally.
Yeah,
Is
we'll
that
just
far
bring
left?
yours up,
Okay,
and then
I
it's
can get to there.
and then it's just this button right here.
Okay, cool.
There are, yeah.
Yeah.
Then I presume you could probably use the clicker or just the
No, I'm
keyboard.
gonna set up a.
Okay, welcome to the City of Chandler Planning and Zoning meeting for today, November 20th. Thanks for everybody for coming out. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Or wait, I'm sorry. We're going to start with roll call.
Roll call.
Apologize. We'll go ahead and start with roll call.
Chairman Human, Vice Chair Rose,
Here.
Commissioner Klob,
Here.
Commissioner Kimball,
Here.
Commissioner Eberly,
Here.
Commissioner Paca, Commissioner Flanders.
Here.
Okay, now we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next on our agenda is to approve the minutes for the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that we had on October 16th of 2019. Are there any questions? Do we have someone to approve?
I make a motion to approve the October 16th minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Everly makes a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, George. All in favor, say aye.
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 They pass unanimously. Okay. So prior to our official meeting this evening, the Planning and Zoning met for a study session where we went over all the items that were on on our agenda, and we're going to have the staff go ahead and read the items that are on the agenda, and they'll be on a consent. And we're going to probably vote those in, but we'll go through those if anyone wants to discuss them. There is an item that's going to have a full presentation, and so upon us getting done with the consent agenda, we'll do a full presentation on that particular item. So staff, do you want to read those items in?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The first item on the consent agenda is PLH 190051 slash PLT 19044 Liberty Manor. This is a request for rezoning from single-family SF 8.5 to planned area development for 9 single-family homes with a preliminary development plan approval for site and housing product, as well as preliminary plat approval. This is located on 2.3 acre site, southeast corner of Dobson and Shawnee Drive. And during the study session held just prior to this meeting, the Planning Commission made some comments which resulted in 3 new stipulations, which are as follows. This is stipulation number 7 on the PDP recommended conditions. So number 7 is going to read, flat concrete tiles shall be used for the roof material. Number 8, the applicant shall work with staff to appropriately wrap stone, stucco, or siding from the front to side facades on plans 1 and 4 and add celestry windows to Plan 2 and 3. And then condition number 9, the applicant shall work with staff to revise the neighborhood sign to better reflect the unique contemporary design of the homes. Item B is PLH 190013, Antioch Community Church. This is a request for preliminary development plan approval for site layout and building architecture for a church expansion. This is for a site located at 1125 North Dobson Road, southeast corner of Dobson and Ironwood Drive. Item C is PLH 1943, Arizona Avenue and Riggs Commercial Signage. This is a request for preliminary development plan approval for comprehensive sign package for a new commercial development, and the subject site is located at the northeast corner of Arizona and Riggs Road. Item E is PLH 1944, Sawtooth Bar and Grill. This is a request for entertainment use permit approval to continue indoor entertainment activities. And this property is located at 4929 West Ray Road, Suite 3, which is at the southeast corner of Rural and Ray Roads. And then the final item on the consent agenda is the request to cancel the December 4th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Okay, thank you, Mr. De La Torre, for reading those in. At this time, is there anyone who would like to speak on any of those items or have a full presentation done? I do have a speaker card for the sign for the sign package on that's being approved tonight. Arizona Avenue and Riggs, the entrance to the city of Chandler from the south. Scott Hudson, did you?
I have nothing that's on the consent agenda, so.
Okay,
all good.
thank you for doing that. Okay, well, so I think at this time we're going to go ahead and close the floor, and we're going to take a vote on those items that were just read in. Do we have a motion to approve those?
I move to approve the consent agenda items with the stipulations as read into the record.
Thank you, Commissioner Kolb.
I'll
Is there a
second.
Commissioner Flanders seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so they pass unanimously.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Those are some great things coming to the city of Chandler. And those are items that are approved here, and then from the processes, we are recommending body. So the planning and zoning is a recommending body, and of some citizens that serve on the board with very from diverse backgrounds. You have architects up here, businessmen, and so we get a lot of good feedback, and we always do our best to be a recommending body to the city of Chandler City Council. And from there, they're definitely are the ones who will approve and move forward with our great city. So, having said that, the next item, and we're going to do a full presentation on it. It's PLH 190021 Dogtopia. They were here prior, and so we're gonna all work together. There's a number of folks who gave us speaker cards, and I'm going to do my best on those items, and we'll kind of go over some general guidelines and just to ensure we move through this process. So at this time, we're going to ask the actual applicant to come up and give a full presentation.
Chair, staff will do a presentation first, followed by the
Very good.
applicant. Thank you. All right, Chair, Commissioners, thank you. Item D is PLH 19-0021. Chairman, as you mentioned, this item was continued from the August 21st, 2019 and the October 2nd Planning and Zoning Commission hearing dates. Just want to ensure that everyone has their the staff presentation up as well. Sorry, we need just a minute while they work through it in the back. There we go. Is that showing on all of your screens? Perfect.
Yes.
All right, as I mentioned, this request was continued from the August 21st and October 2nd, 2019 Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. The request is for a use permit for an outdoor animal play area as an accessory use to an animal daycare for dogs with overnight boarding. Up on your screen is an excerpt from the site plan that was filed by the applicant identifying where that outdoor area is proposed to be. There's that hatching just to the north of Dogtopia, which is located within an approximately 5,900 square foot suite. The subject site is located at 4901 South Arizona Avenue within Suite 7, within the shops at Chandler Heights at the northeast corner of Arizona Avenue and Chandler Heights Road. The general plan designates the site as employment, and the site is further designated by the South Shore Village Area Plan as commercial. This site is zoned as Planned Area Development, or PAD, for C2 commercial uses. And while the current zoning for the site allows for the indoor component, which is the animal daycare with or without overnight boarding, a use permit is required for the outdoor animal play area associated with the animal daycare. Oops. Again, here's a photo to provide a little bit of context. To the north of the site is the Basis School, and to the east is the South Shore Village neighborhood, and then to the west and south is commercial. Again, here are some context photos. The photo on the left is from the shopping center facing South Shore Village, and then the photo on the right is South Shore Village facing the shopping center, and the outdoor play area is outlined in yellow approximately. The applicant is proposing the outdoor play area to be approximately 1,000 square feet with a proposed occupancy of 39 small breed dogs or 30 large breed dogs with a ratio of staff trainers to dogs of 1 staff member for every 20 dogs. The indoor occupancy that can be accommodated is 119 dogs. And so the way that the rotation would occur outside is really based on the interior structure of how they divide the rooms, and that's by behavior and size. Here's a chart showing what the original proposal by the applicant was versus an amended proposal, which we received on November the 8th via the letter through Withy Morris. Originally, the applicant was requesting the outdoor play area to be utilized 7 days a week. The weekday hours would have been 9 a.m. to noon, and then 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And then hours on the weekend would be 10 a.m. to noon, and then 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. After working with the neighborhood, they have revised their proposal to be 6 days a week, excluding Sundays. And the weekday hours they're proposing is 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. So essentially each play group would have a 30-minute time period outside. And then the weekend hours they're proposing are 10 a.m. to noon, on Saturdays only. Again, here are a few photos just to provide a little bit more context. As you can see, the outdoor play area, and I said to the north before just because that was intuitive to me, but it's actually to the east, the neighborhood is. You'll see the landscape island there. There's also trash facilities and electrical facilities, and then an interior circulation route for the shopping center, and an additional landscaping buffer before you go further east into the neighborhood. In terms of public participation, this request was noticed in accordance with the requirements of the Chandler zoning code. In addition to that, the applicant held 2 formal neighborhood meetings as well as an on-site meeting to review sound. The first neighborhood meeting was held on July 9th, 2019, and there were 4 attendees. The second neighborhood meeting was held on October the 23rd, and there were approximately 11 attendees. And the on-site meeting, which staff did attend, was on October the 16th, and there were 5 attendees. Throughout the process, there have been concerns raised by the neighbors, and staff is aware of opposition to the request. It's understanding that the concerns are primarily regarding noise, health concerns, and property values in turn. Staff is in receipt of 2 phone calls, 16 letters or emails of opposition, as well as 2 separate petitions. There was an initial petition that was filed on that was dated August 2019 and was filed with planning staff just prior to the initial Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. Within that petition, they stated that they had concerns regarding the proposal, but wasn't necessarily an opposition petition, whereas the most recent petition that we are in receipt of, which is dated November 2019, does cite that they are in opposition due to noise pollution, equitable losses, health and sanitation concerns, and the potential for groundwater contamination. There are approximately 148 unique signatures on that petition. And then staff is in support of 25 letters or emails as well. Planning staff has reviewed the request and finds that the proposed outdoor animal play area can certainly be a compatible use within a shopping center, and the proposed use is consistent with the general plan. Further, the applicant is recommending additional conditions of approval, and they've provided supplemental information, which is included in your packets. And so with the mitigation techniques that they're proposing, in addition to landscape screening and other screening that's provided on site, including an 8-foot tall opaque fence surrounding the outdoor play area, as well as the perimeter masonry wall that bifurcates the site from the commercial area, or sorry, from the residential area. Staff finds that there shouldn't be detrimental impacts to the surrounding area. However, to ensure that there is not, we are requesting or recommending a 1-year time condition to reevaluate the compatibility of the use with the surrounding residential uses. As I mentioned, we are recommending conditions and have incorporated the applicant's requested or proposed conditions as well. 1 through 4, you'll see they're included in your packet, but also up on the screen, are fairly standard conditions. And then 5, and I'll just read through them quickly. Number 5 is the establishment shall provide a contact phone number of a responsible person, for example, an owner and or a manager, to interested neighbors to resolve noise complaints quickly and directly. Number 6 is the use permit shall be valid for a period of 1 year from the date of council approval. Continuation of the use permit beyond the expiration date shall require reapplication to and approval by the City of Chandler. Number 7 is the outdoor animal play area shall be limited to the hours of 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 o'clock a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday. Number 8, there shall be no outdoor animal play within the outdoor animal play area on Sunday. Number 9, no dog shall be left unattended in the outdoor animal play area, and a staff member of the business shall always accompany any outdoor activity. And number 10, the applicant shall install 3 sound absorption panels to the rear of the building and within the outdoor animal play area as approved by the Development Services Department. With that, again, staff is recommending approval, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. Any questions from the commissioners for the city staff?
Yeah, through the vice chair. Stephanie, how many dogs per exercise session? You said they're like 30 minutes. How many dogs are going to be out there at one time?
Through the chair, Commissioner, it will depend on which play group is out, but it can be up to 39 small breed dogs or 30 large breed dogs.
In that 1,000 square foot area?
Yes, that's correct.
How many employees will be out there?
The ratio that the applicant has proposed is one staff trainer per every 20 dogs.
Okay.
So if they exceed 20, they will need to have 2 trainers at a minimum.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for city staff on this before we kind of turn it over and hear the applicant? Okay. All right. At this time, I'd like to call the applicant forward. Thank you. And you can just state your name and address. Thank you.
Adam Baugh, 2525 East Arizona, Biltmore Circle. Stephanie, will it automatically go to my presentation, or I need to go to it? I think I just took control from somebody else, but hopefully, thank you for your time. What I like about this process, this is the very purpose of a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit, these are uses that are allowed in this zoning district already. The purpose of the conditional use permit is to prescribe conditions to help it operate compatibly, but it doesn't mean that it's not a use that's not allowed. And through the beneficial process of this conditional use permit, it gives you citizen input. And because that citizen input, the applicant, business owner has made adjustments and changes to improve that compatibility. But for this process, I can't say those conditions would have occurred. I can't say those compromises would have happened. And so I do value this process, and I think it's been beneficial to both sides. Allow me to walk you through a little bit of this process, and I think what I'll do is show you that we heard the comments last month. We've done additional noise studies. We've understood the concerns better and come up with more appropriate responses. We've made changes to the business plan and significant revisions to their operational aspects to address those concerns. And at the end of the day, I think you'll find that I don't know if we'll convince anybody beyond what you've heard before, but I hope you'll see that at a minimum, we've made big changes to our plans in response to neighborhood output. It's worth noting, though, that this site was originally under construction in 2007, 2008, the shops at Chandler Heights. And this site was a victim of the recession. And it sat half-built and a total eyesore until about 2017, 2018 or so. And what was interesting is what you started with as under construction and what was built today are a little bit different things. For example, you have a charter school in the middle of a commercial shopping center. Those didn't happen pre-recession. And frankly, if they do go to commercial shopping centers, they're usually going into an existing building that they're backfilling. But building a brand new charter school tells you how hard it is for commercial shopping centers to compete with an online economy today. And these commercial shopping centers are built on the backbone of small businesses who take the risk to go into a place and try to help this shopping center thrive. And I think that's an important consideration from what we're trying to do today. Here's the property today, and you know it already because Stephanie's done an excellent job with her staff report, but I'll probably go to this. What's important to note here is directly north of us is the Basis Charter School. Here's the pet area in the back, and it's a landscaped improved area today. And what we will do is only be within this landscaped area. It will be about 4 inches of aggregate, and then the turf will be placed on top. It is not on top of a concrete surface or an impermeable surface. As you can see from the exhibits previously, it is just 1,000 square feet nestled right next to the corner of 2 buildings. As part of that plan, it will be shielded with an opaque fence. What you don't see in this picture, but what will be added would be a shade canopy on top that will also help reduce and enclose noise. This is important consideration because while you consider this site, it's important to recognize that the residential neighborhood was built behind a commercial shopping center. Along with our proposal today, other things you typically see in a commercial shopping center include outdoor dining and outdoor patios, trash pickup, loading zones, delivery zones, air breaks, outdoor storage sometimes, generally not allowed, but businesses still put their stuff behind their business, smoke breaks, noise, and particularly here at the Basis Charter School, their route of travel travels behind the shopping center. So there are a lot of conditions inherent with a shopping center next to a residential area that just exists simply for the conditions that are today. Here's a side profile, cross-section of what is proposed. Within this play area, 4 inches of aggregate, but a secure enclosure with noise abatement and sub-base. And the reason why I mention that is I think later on you're probably going to hear something about wash-off. or water contaminating sewer or ground wells, there is no wash off. The way this is designed, it allows itself to percolate into the ground. And it's a premium turf, not the same type as necessarily used in a residential product, but something particular for canine use and for cleaning protocols. Here's the perspective view from behind. And that house is the one that's the basis of part of our noise study that I'll get into a little bit in a minute. When we came to you last month, August, I wasn't involved in the case, but as I understand it, they had a noise modeling done, but it wasn't site specific. Essentially, it was created in a computer. And frankly, I don't know if that was sufficient for really addressing what the concerns were in the area. So from that time, they realized they needed to actually have a site-specific noise model study done. In order to create that, they put a speaker out there. So you can see that blue box with a speaker on top to amplify the noise. Now, dogs typically, in this scenario, create about 50 decibels. It was requested we turn up to about 100 decibels. And then normally we'd have a full barrier here, but obviously the expense of creating a fence just for a test didn't lend itself. So we, at a minimum, created a partial barrier directed at the closest residential home. And that's the setup that you see there. That is intended to be a mock-up of an 8-foot fence. But before we did that study, the first thing they did is they measured the ambient conditions already. At the street level, next to the house, they were measuring at 47 decibels. That's the existing ambient conditions. They also measure what the ambient conditions are from the train when it passed, from base of school, and from vehicles up and down that street. And so you can see in that exhibit, the ambient conditions are somewhere between 49 and 62, given the totality of everything. At some point, they made some measurements, and they measured it at the property line, at the street, at the neighbor's house, and eventually worked their way into the backyard of the closest residents' neighbors. And it was measured at 44 decibels. That doesn't mean that you're never going to hear a dog, but what it means is it's almost at a level imperceptible. It's no different than a conversation that you would hear. And as a result, and frankly, it's also worth noting that when that was played, it was played by inciting dogs up in an enclosed building, recording that audio and taking it here and playing it for 15 minutes continually, which is not really representative of what the true outdoor noise is, but one to kind of create what would be ultimately considered a worst case scenario. At the end of the day, and what's most important about this noise study is that the noise created and amplified here is less than the ambient conditions. And with me today is the noise consultant in case you have some more specific questions about how that was conducted and his analysis. As he mentioned, he prepared a study that was included and provided to the city and in the packets you have, but basically the occasional dog bark is expected to be comparable to normal transient sound sources in this community from trains and schools and aircraft. And based on the measurements within that resident's backyard, it's not expected to be perceptible over the sounds of normal living. Normal living does include your neighbor's dog occasionally with a bark here or there, or cars zipping by, or kids swimming in the pool. But it's not going to be at a degree substantially greater than what those ambient conditions are. There is a barking protocol. So beyond a noise study, it's important to understand, how does Dogtopia manage barking? Dogs do bark. And the question is, how do you manage that? Well, frankly, there's an employee training protocol that teaches them how to reduce barking. A lot of that is like with my own kids, when they're constantly saying, dad, 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 dad. At some point, I have to redirect them and say, here's a Snickers bar. And in many ways, with these pets, they need some type of attention. So what you try to do is always have constant outdoor supervision. And that's with a model prepared by a canine behaviorist who teaches these employees to reduce outside stimulus, redirect their attention, and if it's persistent, to remove them to the inside. And ultimately, what they do is they inform pet parents and they educate pets. A dog that has a pattern of barking needs to be taught, needs to be trained, and that's part of that process. And so with this protocol, which they have been implementing, and they have 120 stores, and sometimes over times, they've learned from mistakes, they learn from areas that they need improvement, and eventually they polish these procedures and policies. And this is the barking protocol that works. Here are some other locations, because frankly, if there is a noise concern, we want it to be based on fact and not perception. And so what we did is we analyzed other facilities in the city of Chandler, and also looked at some other facilities in the city of Gilbert. We didn't just look at any one, but we looked at the ones that are in a similar situation in proximity to residential neighborhoods. Because frankly, almost every commercial shopping center has a residential neighborhood right behind it. That's the nature of commercial shopping centers. And so we were able to find these ones. And what you see in these numbers next to it, for example, Arizona Canine Center, 15 feet. That's the closest residential property line to Arizona Canine Center and through all this list. You'll also note on the bottom of there, Dogtopia of Gilbert, 125 feet. And so surely, if there was a concern about noise and barking and odor to the point that it became a nuisance level, it would be manifested in records, calls, complaints to the cities. And here in the city of Chandler, these records are maintained with the police department. In Gilbert's the neighborhood services department. But in either circumstance, there was no single instance of complaints from noise or odor whatsoever attributed to these facilities. And I think that's reassuring to me, because I understand the concern from the neighbors. They've invested in their community. They have an expectation of privacy. But I also want to make sure that when you make a decision today, that it's based on fact and reality and evidence, and not based on perception. And it's worth noting here that this facility is about 150 to 160 feet away from the closest residence, which is very consistent and in many cases greater than some of these other closer pet care facilities and boarding facilities through the city of Chandler. And every one of these ones on here has an outdoor component. So what are our policies and procedures? Well, they've been defined over time. And as I mentioned, when you have 120 stores, on occasion you learn from your mistakes. You have to revise your policies and implement new procedures and grow and be adaptable. And so they have canine behaviorists on board that has 16 years of experience and hours of professional certifications and experience training and teaching. It starts with playroom management. Tired dogs on the inside are less likely to bark on the outside. And more importantly, we have remote webcams that will be stationed that are inside already, so owners can see from their desktop at work what is actually happening on that area. See these pets be active. Initially, with onboarding, there's all kinds of trainings, there's ongoing trainings, but there's at least 6 modules to begin with, and ultimately up to 17 training modules. The first one takes 6 hours. And so this isn't just a casual training protocol. A lot of them are done online, but they're also done in store, and they're constantly being retrained and recertified and re-reminded. And so these most importantly include how to curb barking behavior. They also include how to identify infectious diseases or prevent concerns from occurring. And also, more importantly, they include sanitation protocols, both indoors and outdoors. There is a use permit test, and I think it's worth considering what the zoning ordinance says. And it provides some factors for your consideration. And I want to just go through those factors, but at the end of the next slide, we'll get a little bit more greater detail. But the first one is it consistent with the general plan? Absolutely. This is what the general plan recommends, a commercial area that includes services and amenities like this. And this is the area where these uses should go into. But it's not just to assume that because you're next to a residential area, you're going to have an automatic default of negative presence. All residential areas are next to and backing, most often, commercial centers. It has ingress, egress, and fire protection. And that matters here because you want to make sure there's adequate separation. In this case, a barrier wall between the commercial center and the neighbors next door. So people coming here aren't parking in front of the neighbors' houses next door. You want to make sure there's a sufficient loading and parking area, which occurs in the front of the building, not in the back. And there is zero impact on public services, and more importantly, a screening and buffering mechanism, both with the 8-foot fence that wraps the area and the perimeter fence as well. Beyond the perimeter fence is a landscape tract, then a street, and then a perimeter fence for the residents' homes. Signage is compliant, exterior lighting is compliant. We are not adjusting the retention of the landscaping whatsoever, and the building design in particular conforms to all city standards. I think the last part is probably the greatest emphasis, and it's a compatibility test. And as part of that compatibility test, it's important to note this complies with all city codes, ordinances, and regulations. It complies with the general plan, as staff pointed out. It is located in a commercial area where you would expect to see this very type of use. The noise study, which is, I think, the most important consideration, demonstrates that in the backyard, it is less than what the ambient conditions are. And there have been zero complaints at other pet facilities, at least the ones that I presented to you in Chandler and in Gilbert. And there are far greater outdoor ambient noises, mentioned specifically with the train, the traffic along Chandler Heights, the school next door. The school next door has orchestra, they have outdoor play, they have athletic events, they have parents with queuing and cars backing up. So there's a lot of noises in this area. It isn't just it's not that we are the only noise generator. And I think you have to consider the totality of that as part of your ambient conditions. And lastly, and I don't think we should take this lightly, but staff is able to make a recommendation of approval. And it's approval that because they recognize the compatibility test, but most important, they recognize that the owner-operator has taken additional measures to ensure compatibility. And what I like best about the conditional use permit, it is not a land use right. It's a land use privilege that's conditioned upon compliance with stipulations, which means it can be revoked. Staff has a recommendation of stipulation that it can have a 1-year review, and we welcome that opportunity to come back and prove ourselves that we've been responsible operators. But frankly, if this becomes a nuisance that's been projected, and that you'll probably hear from the neighbors today, it doesn't mean that that privilege can't be revoked before that 1-year mark. That's the purpose of a conditional use permit. And it's happened to me on a drive-through use for a Dutch Brothers. So I can tell you that those conditional use permits have been revoked and can be revoked at different times. I wanted to let you know that I certainly understand the concerns of the neighbors. And when I became involved, I talked to the client and said, we need to find ways to improve compatibility here. I think one is addressing the perception. I think one's limiting the hours. I think another is creating more noise attenuation. So what we've done is come up with 4 new conditions that I hope you'll consider and recognize the value. Number 1, rather than having pets outdoors all day long at any time we want, we've prescribed very specific limitations. Simply an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half in the afternoon. And what that does, it allows all 3 rooms to cycle through it for a 30-minute moment. And more importantly, when we read the comments from the neighbors and the feedback we received, we know that weekends are sacred time, Sundays in particular. So we've agreed to not have any outdoor play on Sundays and only a 10 to noon window on Saturdays. When you consider all the noises that occur in a residential area, including lawnmowers and blowers, a 2-hour window on a Saturday is very appropriate. Number 3, at no occasion ever will there ever be pets unattended. And why I like that ratio that was presented, it gives a chance, so if there is a dog that maybe is a persistent barker, one employee can take it in while the other's out there monitoring the pets. And 4th and final, we've been able to work with the landlord and find ways to install absorption panels on the wall. These absorption panels, rather than the brick wall that might reverberate, these absorption panels will help absorb noise. And here's an example of what they look like from the property today. Excuse me, what they look like upon installation of the property. I think at the end of the day, we do believe this is appropriate. I don't want to say, I certainly understand the concerns from the neighbors. And frankly, it's one that you deal with all the times when I'm applying for liquor licenses or outdoor patios for restaurants or drive-through uses and menu box and speakers. But when I think about how you build a community, your small businesses are the backbone of your commercial enterprises. And a commercial summit has struggled so much that it had to bring in a major anchor tenant, being a charter school that creates 0 income tax revenue. I hope that you'll give us the chance to prove we can be responsible operators, to prove that we've implemented protocols and procedures that make this compatible. And at a minimum, a 1-year review is highly appropriate to demonstrate that the applicant has acted responsibly and can prove that he is a good operator. And I hope that at the end of the day, you'll recognize that on a conditional use permit, it can be revoked if it ever were to become the nuisance as projected. I know you have a number of people here in support and against, and so what I'll do is probably take a seat, reserve my time, rebuttal on the backside after you have a chance to hear from the neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Baugh. Any questions for Mr. Baugh?
To the Vice Chair. Adam, thank you for your presentation, and now I know how to get a Snickers out of you. I just got a big. What, and forgive me if I missed it in your presentation, what was the decibel reading from the charter school, kids out playing in the playground to the nearest house? Was that recorded?
I'm not sure if we actually had done that measurement. Eric, why don't you come up and give your name for the record just so they have it for the file. State your name and who you are.
Yeah, my name is Eric Miller-Klein from A3 Acoustics, and I did the measurements. So we measured a noise level approximately 60 to 62 decibels when the kids were out yelling and playing as a maximum. So you can look at sound as an average over time, or you can look at it as a maximum, and all of the things that are noted in our study with regards to dogs barking is not averaging. It's not averaging the gaps of a bark and then the peaks of a bark, but it's only looking at the peak levels of a bark in the context of background noise in the community. But background noise, like for instance, the kids playing, airplanes, things like that, that was actually looked at as an average over the period of time that they were in that vicinity.
So 60.
And that was at the adjacent, one of the adjacent properties?
It was,
That
yeah,
reading was done?
on the sidewalk adjacent to one of the properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Baugh and the applicant this time?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, we have, there's pretty good interest in this item, and so we have roughly, I have 19 speaker cards that are in favor. I'd like just to acknowledge them, and then there's also 19 that are opposed, and then I have a number of cards of folks who would like to speak. And so what we're going to do is there's three people that are in favor of this item that would like to speak. We would really like to not just kind of go and say the same things over and over. So if you want to give your time to somebody in opposition, there's a number of folks who are giving their time to Kyle Skipworth, a resident next door. And so we're going to grant him a little bit longer to speak. But if you, when I call your name to speak, go ahead and approach the mic and state your, your name and address, and you'll have, we're going to put a 3-minute time limit on your time. And we thank everybody for coming out and value everyone's opinion. So first person I'll go ahead and call upon is, and if you want to speak, if you change your mind, you don't want to, just let us know, but it's Micah Adams. Micah Adams in favor of this item.
So my name is Mike Adams, as you said. I live at 1616 Western Main, and I just kind of wanted to put my opinion out there. Part of the reason why I choose to take my dogs to Dogtopia and have is when I initially went to tour, they had talked about all the benefits, part of which being an outdoor area. I grew up in a house and I had dogs growing up my whole life, and part of seeing my dogs in that house was seeing them have a space to socialize in the backyard. I work long hours, and so I enjoy the benefit of being able to take my dogs somewhere where they can socialize with other dogs and be able to be outdoors, hopefully, and kind of enjoy themselves and be able to not be pinned up all day. I do live in an apartment, and it is a smaller apartment, and so having a space for them to kind of be able to move around and be outdoors and enjoy the sunlight, enjoy, being around different people, different dogs is huge. The other thing that I feel is really important about Dogtopia as a whole, I've been to other boarding facilities. Dogtopia is extremely clean. They're extremely professional. The owner clearly cares. Every time we walk in, they know exactly who I am, anybody who walks in behind me, they know them, they know their dogs. They are extremely professional about everything. You walk in and you don't hear hardly any noises. There's very little barking. They really care about what they're doing. They care about the community, and they care about the animals that they're being charged with. And it really shows. And I personally appreciate everything that they've done for my animals, who really are a part of my family. That's kind of the most of what I have to say about that.
Thank you very much, Micah. Do we have any questions for Micah? Thank you for speaking. Okay, Paula Kloeb, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you very much for your time and allowing us to speak on this.
Can you state your name?
I'm sorry,
and
Paula
state
Kloeb. I am at 4909 East Colonial Drive. I both live and work in the city of Chandler, And I also take my dog to Dogtopia and have since they opened. I am in very much of agreement. It is such a clean, fresh, welcoming place. The staff takes care of all of the dogs, all of the needs. There is very little sound when you're inside the building and the dogs are 2 rooms away from you. You don't hear the barking. And the reason for that is their guidance and their redirections. If you have a dog, then you know that they want attention. And when dogs bark, it's because they're not getting the attention that they want to get. Excuse me. I know that the numbers are being thrown around about how there's one person to every 20 dogs. However, I will tell you that in all the times that we have been there since they've been opened, we have probably never gone over 10 dogs in a room whenever my dog has been there. And believe me, I watch that monitor from my office all day long. The dogs are engaged. They're engaged with the people who are walking around with them. When one dog starts to act up, or if a dog does bark, which no, I can't hear from my office, but I can definitely see it on the camera. You can tell when a dog barks. That dog is immediately redirected and taken somewhere else, or the barking is stopped. There's a big difference between a constant barking dog and a dog that just randomly barks while they're at play. I have a home in Chandler. I have people around me that have dogs. I have no control over how long they leave their dogs outside, or my few neighbors that love to let their dogs just bark and bark and bark and bark. And there's not really a whole lot I can do about that. That's just part of being in a neighborhood and part of being in a home. And those are just the things that we deal with, but they are able to control that environment a little bit better because that is their business and that is what they do. I did go to the Gilbert facility and looked at it outside, and there was very little noise that you could hear. There was definitely nothing that you could smell. I manage an apartment community here in Chandler on Germain and Dobson, and I have both a large animal park within my community, within 100 feet away of apartments, and I also border a daycare who does have an outside play area. I get more complaints every month on that daycare than I do about the numerous dogs that we have in our community. So I just am here today. I would really ask that you approve the play yard for a business that is providing a safe environment for our pets when we're at work and they're there. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you very much for your words. Any questions for Paula? No? All right, thank you so much. Okay, Taylor Hyatt, did you want to speak? Okay, thank you, Taylor. All right. So, Leonard Brabs? Leonard Brabs?
Leonard Brabson, 3451 East Links Place. In an effort not to reiterate that everything has been said, I'll move on to a point that as a dog owner of many years and many experiences with several different facilities, I will say one thing over. Dogtopia has been without a doubt the most professional, clean, welcoming place we've ever sent a dog to. My biggest concern as a consumer, as we've talked about the importance of commercial properties and the small business, is the fact that if I choose to board my animal, I do want the opportunity for that animal to go outside at some point. So seeing that they're going to allow 3 hours a day in total is enough to give me comfort that, he can go stretch his legs as a larger breed. So I just want to make sure they have every opportunity to achieve that. It seems like everybody somewhat understands that this is a pretty easy case to approve. I just wanted to lend my support to it and say that as a consumer, I think it would be a great idea for them to do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leonard. Any questions for Leonard? Okay. Okay. We're going to call upon Karan. Karan. You can just state your name and address. Thank you.
Kiran Dupadahalli, 239 East Powell Way. So I'm the one who collected all the signatures last time for the August 21st meeting here. So at that time, people were not really well informed in the neighborhood, and we didn't had enough time to collect all the signatures. So my point here is about our neighborhood is not opposing the business. So this time we had enough time to go door to door, explain people about it. So last time who said that they would not sign, and this time they were well aware that we are only opposing the outdoor playpen area. We are not telling that Doctopia, we don't want Doctopia, we don't want the business here. So we got last time when I went, we got only around 40 signatures, and that was 40 households. But this time we got 148 individual signatures. People who said no last time. This time when we explained them, this is only about the outdoor playpen area, and this is not about not having the business. We are definitely for the business. It's just that we don't want the outdoor playpen area for all the reasons mentioned in the petition.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you, Karan. Any questions for Karan? Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Sarah Hansen?
Hi there, my name is Sarah Hansen, 4825 North 82nd Street. I'm not a resident of Chandler, but my kids go to Chandler Basis, so right next door to the school, and Dogtopia. And I made some notes that Dogtopia has enabled me to spend more time with all of my family, including my dog. It has helped my dog, my puppy, get trained to be more socialized, so I can take her out in public and I can take her on walks and have her be safe, both in Chandler and in my home. Not only is she learning to be with other dogs, but she's learning how to interact with professionals who can help her be a better dog. I find it interesting that the hours of operation that they can be outside is around the time of drop-off and pickup at Basis Chandler, which is a cluster of cars, kids screaming, high schoolers. It's incredibly loud. And it's 3 hours a day, so it's around the same time. I also find it interesting in the same plaza, there's an outdoor Mexican restaurant backing up to the same neighborhood with an outdoor patio that also provides the noise level. Jules is part of my family, and I understand there's concerns with the noise and concerns with the waste and just general concerns, but that Dogtopia is one of the cleanest places I've ever walked into. And you walk in the lobby and you cannot hear the puppies. And you walk in the lobby and you cannot smell anything. You smell a clean, sanitized place. It smells cleaner than the high school. When you go outside, I would be willing to bet that people walking their dogs in the neighborhoods provides more waste than dogs that are actually cared for on a certified turf that can be cleaned up regularly, that doesn't go into the ground, that is cared for by professionals, rather than people walking the neighborhoods letting their dogs defecate. So I'm obviously very much a supporter of this, and I just encourage you to vote yes.
Okay, Sarah, thank you very much.
Thank
Do you have any questions for Sarah? No. Okay. Okay. Kyle Skipworth. So for the record, we just want to state that a number of the speaker cards have donated time to Kyle to speak in representation of them. And so what we're going to do is, if staff's okay, we'd like to give Kyle, 10 to 15 minutes tops, to go ahead and speak.
All right, good evening, commissioners, city staff, everyone in attendance. We appreciate your time. We appreciate everyone's input into this issue. This process, as their attorney has alluded to, has made, I think, a lot of people better residents, better productive citizens of their city. And I think I appreciate the continuance from the first one because it allowed us to really vet this company that's trying to become a part of our neighborhood. I'm not going to address this because I was going to respectfully ask that any questions for me be stated until the end just because I have a lot of ground to cover and I want to be respectful of my time and your time as commissioners. And I just want to say I've spent a lot of time on this, vetting this, a lot of time. And with that being said, we'll start. This is just the agenda for what we're going to be covering. We're going to go over numbers, data points, and then most importantly, our desired outcome. Myself and the residents, as many of the people who are speaking in favor of this, we have no problem with their business plan. Their business plan has been proven to be highly successful. However, we just have and oppose the outdoor, which is a use permit, which requires compatibility and the best interest for our community. Many of the people who are speaking in favor, unfortunately, I respect their opinions, but they are not vested members of our neighborhood. Some do have direct ties or indirect ties with the school, as the young lady alluded to and stuff, but we're about following an honest process. So by the numbers, these are some data points, 146 signatures in our opposition, 3 letters from verified homeowners next to Dogtopia locations with exterior play yards, at least I believe it's 16 emails of opposition, and multiple misrepresented statements and facts, which we will go into later. These are some city codes that are applicable, in my opinion, to this case. We have obviously our barking dog noise ordinance, which someone did allude to that they don't have any control over barking dogs in their neighborhood. We do have a noise ordinance for that. Chandler PD is the enforcement body on that. If this was classified as a kennel, it would require C3 zoning and a minimum of 500 feet away from residential homes. And this is about the care and boarding, which is a description of a kennel. So we give kennels a 500-foot setback from residents to protect them from that. But this is somehow kind of snaking its way around that description of a kennel for different zoning. Neighborhood preservation, I'm not going to go into that too much. And most importantly to me is 35-1302, which is a use permit designation for C2 commercial, which is what this is with a PAD overlay. This is the most applicable regarding best interest of the community, and I want to highlight that point. I'm going to go into it later, and compatibility. So these are comparable cities that denied outdoor use. I didn't have time to vet all of them. I Google satellite viewed and called almost every Dogtopia in the country that they currently have open and operating, just for a point of reference. These 4 cities all denied outdoor play use due to zoning stipulations, and it was either verified by calling the city directly or calling the Dogtopia and asking them directly. This is some information of their corporate material regarding the incredible success that their business model can and will have. They type themselves as recession-proof, which their attorney alluded to. And this is a franchise. We have the definition of small business. This is a part of a corporate entity. They're just one piece of a corporate entity, and they are recession-proof. They're on pace to quadruple their locations by 2021. Pet spending nationwide, as you see, is going to go up by $27 billion in the next few years. The Chandler location has been open and operating for about 3 months. And if this was such a vital and integral piece of their business model that they could or couldn't live without, they wouldn't have ever been able to open with it. And as we know from a prior meeting, 35 to 40% of these locations operate without this outdoor area. And if we want to get into the numbers of the ones that are actually adjacent to homes, we can, in my opinion. So just to prove, we will not be handcuffing a franchise in any way, shape, or form. They have all the ingredients, especially here in this Chandler location, to be incredibly, incredibly successful, which we hope they are. Regarding the sound study, I want to touch base on some things that multiple neighbors were in attendance, and they can attest to the noise. Just for context, that's the biggest thing I want to talk about is context. I'm not here to argue about the details. I think both sides can easily argue, what about this, what about that, this wasn't realistic, this was unrealistic, this was too loud, this wasn't loud enough. They did claim that they wanted to do the study at 50 decibels. I mean, unfortunately, it's hard to gather information of what exactly quantifies how loud a dog can bark. But if we can search it online, the loudest dog bark ever is 113 decibels. So to say that 50 is an average when we know that 113 is the max. So to say that somewhere in the middle is realistic, and that's measured in front of a barking dog's mouth. Their study claims that our neighborhood is an average of 47 decibels. They also claim that this freight train going by, which is incredibly infrequent, is 49. They are trying to say that our community, on average, is as loud as a freight train consistently going by. And for this average, and from the study that I pulled these statistics from, they used a single data point to create an average. The trains are very infrequent. And just from another data point, the National Transportation Noise Map operated by the U.S. Department of Transportation, when you plug in my address, says that I am at less than 35 decibels from transportation noise, according to their map, just for context. So the comparisons that they're trying to compare themselves to are incredibly acute. A car driving by on Colorado, gone like that. Recess, intermittent, and school's also not in session 52 weeks out of the year. We talk about the loading. We've already contacted the Alamo. Trucks are not allowed to run idling. We've mitigated a lot of the sound issues that they've alluded to living on the backside of commercial. We've discussed trash pickup, and we have contact numbers for Republic and Waste Management to help mitigate the noise on that. So to try to play up the idea that we live in some incredibly loud neighborhood is simply ludicrous to me. The residents who live there can attest to what our neighborhood truly is like. Now, this is one of the most, it's frustrating as I went through this process about a lot of the misrepresentations that have unfortunately been given to this community. And this is as most chronological order as I can be. So the following sides are all from a thorough vetting process that I did, and I found numerous instances of dishonesty, misleading facts, irrelevant information, and quite frankly, egregious errors. The first one is that the Arcadia location was stated in homes from the first planning and zoning meeting, and if I wouldn't have vetted that on the spot, we would have found that we would have just taken their word for it and said, yeah, Arcadia, there are no issues. It's right next to homes. It's nowhere near homes. I want to talk about the conversations that occurred in my yard that have been included in the packet. They weren't directly talked about today, but if anyone has gone through the packet, they try to use and twist my words against me quite a bit, stating that I was in agreement for some things, not in agreement, or stating that I said at a worst case scenario, I was cautiously okay with it. The context of that conversation, which they typed up in the minutes, was nothing was any semblance of an agreement in any way. They also misrepresented the context of myself declining an additional in-person meeting, which they addressed in a letter directly to City Council or through Planning and Zoning, however that works, written by their attorney that says, quite frankly, Mr. Skipper declined that meeting. I declined that meeting in the context that my words had already been twisted and used against me out of context. Then they only contacted me. They didn't contact any other neighbors. No other neighbors to talk about concessions. They only went after me. And I had no contact, and they only went after me after they had retained counsel. And I, quite frankly, I didn't feel very comfortable trying to take a one-on-one meeting with that. I felt like they were going to try to pigeonhole me again. So this is a dishonest response to a resident from the Hamilton Public Meetings. A resident asked if Basis was okay to set up Dogtopia there. Dogtopia replied, they haven't expressed any concerns. We've talked to them a few times, and they wrote a letter of endorsement for us. Basis has never written a letter of endorsement for it. I had a personal meeting with the dean and the head of operations, and I vetted it with the city. There has been no letter of endorsement, nor Basis said, we have never endorsed them. We wanted to take the state of being neutral. This is another deceptive response directly to a commissioner on this very staff, Commissioner Pekow. He asked the question, have they reached out to their commercial neighbors, Alamo and Basis? Michael Perlman responded that they had received recommendation letters they submitted from both of them, when in fact they've never gotten a letter from Basis. More deceptive responses. Basis is neutral, as I said. In my meeting, they said, we want to be like Switzerland. We're not opposing, we are not in favor of, because it's a business and it's a neighbor in the community and they want to be a neighbor with us. They stated neutrality of this whole thing. The comparison locations, which was in their applicant packet and as their attorney alluded to in this, they surveyed other in the packet outdoor pet care facilities. We'll just go through some of those. And I do want to talk about one in particular that's not in my packet. They cite the Chandler Small Animal Clinic. It's a veterinary hospital first. They have no true outdoor play, and boarding is secondary, vetted with 2 phone calls. The Ocotillo Animal Clinic, one of their representations. No true outdoor play. Dogs are taken out usually on one-on-one basis, and that was vetted with 2 phone calls as well. Boarding secondary. It's a vet clinic first. Family Vet Care of Chandler, one of their comparisons. They don't offer any outdoor daycare or they don't have daycare or boarding period at that location. Gilbert Dogs 24/7, no outdoor space whatsoever, vetted with 2 phone calls. Paw Commons, no outdoor space whatsoever, but yet again, used in comparison. Dogtopia Gilbert, an incredibly misleading measurement of 125 feet when the town of Gilbert Planning and Zoning required that play area be put on what would be the west side of the building, completely shielding homes away from noise. So that's the reason there are no noise complaints from there. So as you can see, unfortunately, there's a theme of a lot of deceptive and misleading facts in here. their canine behaviorist letter regarding barking mitigation. Just for the sake of it, they address it to the city of Chandler, but yet they never even reference the correct Chandler location. They reference the legacy at Gilbert Commons twice. They also state in the package that they have never had any issues at the 120 plus locations in over 1 year. The following slides are quotes from real homeowners that live next to Dogtopias with outdoor play yards. These were verified homeowners. These next two homeowners, they took time out of their day to email a complete stranger about their experience. And these were vetted with the assessor's office in the county of Plano. These are just some of their thoughts. Business is quite good, especially during the holidays and long weekends. Sam and Patty Taylor had to install new windows in their home, and they can still hear the barking. And I hope the city of Chandler is more considerate than the city of Plano. This is Ramon Guerrera, also from Plano, Texas. They're next door neighbors. He even states we've had to call our local officials about a half dozen times. These are real people who've dealt with real issues with a Dogtopia. So these are apples to apples comparison. These aren't apples to oranges. These aren't trying to compare yourselves to a vet hospital or someone who doesn't have true outdoor play. And this is an aerial view of the Plano, Texas location. And as I said, I checked with the assessor's office. The two most adjacent homes are theirs, and it is eerily similar to our Chandler location. It is on the backside of commercial. I don't have the exact distance, but there's a void space. It goes into a block wall, service road similar to Colorado, and then our backyards. And these are two people that can to attest. And this is a national franchise that's supposed to follow all the same policies and procedures, yet we find massive deviations from these policies and procedures. And I'm going to be slightly off topic, but we can show you Gilbert. We can show you Scottsdale. I couldn't show you Arcadia because when I took a tour of it, the dogs weren't outside. But when I took the Scottsdale tour, the same group that was barking nonstop, I went inside, took a tour, came back outside, same group, still outside, still barking. I got the video on my phone to prove it. The Plano locations, real people next to real outdoor Dogtopias that they're supposed to have redirection, and unfortunately they don't. Now, we are going to address some drainage and sanitation concerns for the possibility of this Chandler location. They have no true separate drainage. Instead, they rely on, per the construction plans, to drain through the turf and aggregate to the grade below. The turf that they use, a PT Pro 90, I searched the exact turf that they want to do. It's not special, it's not permeable, it's not extra, it's $2.99. You can buy it online. Any one of us can. There's going to be, or at worst case scenario, an 1 to 1.5 inch vertical gap between the fence and the turf. So all I'm saying is there is a possibility that we could have runoff. Yes, they are going to have cleaning protocols, but unfortunately we've seen at other locations sometimes there is a lap in those protocols. Now I'm only showing you this because the next two slides are going to be very applicable to this. And once again, this is homeowner Alex Gonzalez, who lives in Houston, Texas, next to an outdoor Dogtopia. They're a noisy neighbor. One might expect barking dogs to be taken back in to minimize. This doesn't seem to be normal. Rather, the employees yell at the dogs to be quiet. Each of their breaks involve numerous dogs barking and humans yelling. He says he has to raise the issue more often or every few months, and then it slightly improves, and then it goes right back to the status quo. And unfortunately for Alex, his particular location, it's simply gross, in his own words. I didn't put that quote on there, but if you look at the letter which has been submitted, he says it's gross.
Kyle, we got about a minute left, okay?
This is a Google Street View from Alex's house dated October of 2018. That shows their runoff going right into the city sidewalk. Those are received from Alex last week. He's had to deal with this issue for over a year with a Dogtopia as a neighbor. So in closing, I know I'm short on time. We've shown real issues with real neighbors with real Dogtopias. They have been deceitful. They have been misleading. Quite frankly, they have lied to residents. They have lied directly to this commission. Have they been honest in this permit process? We as residents have followed this to a T. They tried to pigeonhole me as the first link in the chain, being the closest home. They have cherry-picked data to support their current cause. And in closing, we just ask that you deny this use permit due to a lack of compatibility, not being in the community's best interest, and I am finishing up, I apologize, uphold property rights and honor a community's informed decision on their best interest. And I just want to specify, this is not anti-dog, it is not anti-business. It's about the quality of life and expectations that go with being a Chandler resident. And we do wish them all of the success as a business and as a neighbor, but just with indoor use only, no outdoor use. And then I know I'm short on time from a presentation standpoint, but I have a lot of data points if anyone has questions for me regarding anything.
Any questions from commissioners?
Commissioner Kolb. Kyle, thank you for your presentation. In speaking with other municipalities, other locations that, that do have these parks or these outdoor facilities that you've talked to, do any of those have the added stipulations like what we're proposing or what the applicant's proposing with a 1-year timeline where they have to come back in front of the municipality?
So respectfully, the only locations that I spoke to directly to confirm were ones that did not. So from a case that did, so I think to answer your question, you're asking if the municipalities that do have outdoor play, correct?
Correct.
Correct. I don't have that answer, sir. I don't know. I know from a Houston standpoint, just doing some research, it's kind of like the Wild West of zoning. There's really no land use stipulations. It's more land division. So in theory, I was told in research, it's like you could build a skyscraper next to a home. Like it's all about your piece of property and it's your rights. So from that aspect, and those were just from a few places that I reached out to. I didn't have the time to vet and research every single facility nor call every municipality. So I can't answer that question about stipulations.
But wouldn't you agree if a municipality, those challenges that you showed the pictures of might not be an issue had that municipality been more
Correct.
proactive and making sure the applicant was abiding by the stipulations
Okay.
that they provided?
So I think alluding to, you're talking about the kind of the devil's advocate size of, well, we would have a time stipulation for a review process. Now my answer back would be, they have proven to be dishonest and misleading from the very beginning. So what's to say that they can't abide by it in 1 year, but then all of a sudden there's all these what ifs? We could go into a million different things. In the summer, it's incredibly hot in the afternoon. It's not safe for anyone to have their pet out in the afternoon. So now we start looking at all these what ifs leading into, well, we can't put it out there, but we still should get our hour and a half. So now we need to put it somewhere else. And now over time, this will erode, and they've proven they've been deceitful to us. They've been deceitful to this very commission. And we shouldn't be an oversight committee as a community. We have followed an honest process about being honest and upfront and trying to be rational about this. And yet, why should we give them the benefit of the doubt? They have lied directly to my community about this whole thing. So I don't understand why we should trust them to be good about a 1-year stipulation when easily anybody can hide something or contain it for a year, when in reality it's like they've already proven they'll lie a little bit. What about when we erode that over 5, 10, 15 years? That would be my rebuttal back to that, Commissioner Kolb.
But I think we have, if we look back at case history of, not necessarily of, quite honestly, this is the only dog type facility that we've ever had this kind of challenge with. And this commission, since I've been on, has approved numerous. But we've done many, bars with live bands that back up to residential. Some within blocks of where we're standing right now. With those same stipulations that the applicant has to prove. Once they prove they're a good neighbor, they get a little bit more. They continue to prove it, they get a little bit more. It can easily be pulled back.
Correct. Now,
it's to protect those neighbors from those type of scenarios.
Correct. Now, to answer that back, in your opinion, based on the facts that I've shown about how misleading they've been, have they been a good neighbor to us, though?
It's not for me to judge. I wasn't part of the discussions on who lied to who. So I can't say one way or another. What I can do is I can review the facts of what data that our city staff can provide to us when we make follow-up reviews of these businesses.
I think to just finalize this answer would be, this is based on a compatibility use permit. And when we look at the verbiage of what is in the best interest of our community, and unfortunately, when I look at an applicant who is willing to lie just to get this put in, that isn't in the best interest of my community. And that's how I'll answer that question to summarize it all with regarding the stipulations and everything, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Everly. Through the chair, Kyle, thank you for your presentation. You listed several cities that denied the use of permits to Dogtopia, and frankly, I would certainly hope that Chandler would be above almost every one of those, if not all of them. I certainly wouldn't follow Tucson as an example with our exemplary staff, and we've got an amazing staff here. and council, amazing council members. Do you, I'm curious how we went from 47 signatures to 146 over the course of the last, since we met in August.
Correct.
Could you expound on that a little bit?
So I did a ton of the footwork myself. I was unable on the last one myself, and we designated a few leads in the community. We had community meetings together. Many of them were attendees to the meetings, so they were well informed. And then I showed them the facts that I had come up with, and we simply went door to door, sir. We did it the old-fashioned way. We went foot traffic, knocked on people's doors, explained to them. If they had any questions whatsoever, we could answer majority all of them. If they didn't feel comfortable, if they had any questions, it was to be directed to Stephanie Watney with the city. And that we went, it was foot traffic, sir, door to door, knocking on doors, the old school way.
And so as far as you know, and I can certainly follow up with Mr. Ball on this, as far as you know, the 11 people that attended this meeting and the looks like 4, 5, and 11 in 3 different meetings, those are all, you know, obviously neighbors, right? They're in your neighborhood somewhere.
Yeah, we don't have a single signature in that opposition petition that is outside of our neighborhood. Those are all South Shore Village residents.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Commissioner Kimball.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your presentation. A lot of data. I know going back to the August meeting that we had, it's been 3-4 months now. I think one of the goals and objectives that we as planning and zoning and as the city is trying to bring cohesive understanding between citizens and business. And there's always a fine line. There's never a correct answer. There's probably never a right answer. But I think our goal was to try to get your neighborhood association with the owners together and try to resolve the issues that have been presented.
Yes, sir.
Looks like there's been 2 or 3 meetings between the owners and neighbors, with the engineer, with commissioners. And it looks like that, from what I can see, is that the applicant has made several concessions. They were going to put up new panels, new acoustical barriers. They've reduced their hours, 3 hours a day. There's no Sunday hours. They backed up that. So it looks like, to me, from a business standpoint, that the owners have made concessions to try to cope with this issue. But I don't know what the neighborhood has done as far as concessions. I don't see concessions. I don't see what the neighborhood is trying to do to make it applicable to make this business successful.
Well, respectfully,
So
sir,
help me understand that
yes,
if you
sir.
could.
Well, respectively, this business can and will succeed at an incredibly high rate with or without this. It's been proven through facts. So then the idea of us making concessions, a compatible relationship, is based on benefit for both parties. And unfortunately, there is no positive benefit to our community. Now, outside of maybe the 1 or 2 people in the community who may take their dog directly to Dogtopia, I ran into one actually when I was attempting to get him to sign my petition. We don't benefit from this. We see no direct benefit from this. None whatsoever. It's a benefit for everyone who is not vested in the community, which it's a service that they currently offer. And from the best of my knowledge, none of their services will change with the addition of this outdoor play space. They still offer daycare, they still offer boarding, they still offer spa services. All the things that people spoke about as far as the training of the dogs and the socialization of the dogs, all of that still and will continue to take place. So then to finalize this answer, sir, it's like, you know, when we look at the concessions, yes, there were concessions made by the business, but unfortunately, this is going to become a he said, she said. I asked them, what are you willing to give up? Not the other way around. I had to poach that question in my backyard, sir. And I'm the only resident that was in there, so unfortunately this will become a he said, she said, because their minutes are submitted indicated that they did, but unfortunately I poached that question. And it wasn't until I poached that question, it was our sound study says this, our sound study says that. There would have been no concessions. And as far as reaching out to the community, sir, there was a meeting at the Hamilton Library to discuss the sound study, and there was the one meeting done with the sound study. No concessions were ever directly given to residents. And as I alluded earlier, they only tried to meet with me personally. They didn't try to reach out to anyone else. They're literally 150 feet from our door. There's a lot of people that showed up and that had issue with this. They never knocked on our doors. They never tried to contact us. They only tried to contact me. And only because I have been the tip of the spear as far as even trying to see if this is a compatible relationship or not. And then due to the vetting process and the fact finding, sir, I found it's like, I don't like neighbors who lie to me. I don't trust people who lie to myself or to neighbors or to misconstrue and do misleading facts. So because of that, sir, I unfortunately have I've been very taken back, and I quite frankly can't trust any of their future intentions. So that's why, as far as alluding to the concessions that were made, none of them were even made known to the neighborhood to even discuss.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Kyle this time? No? Thank you, Kyle. The applicant would like to come back up. Thank you.
Members of the commission, I think there's a number of things that I'm not sure merit addressing, but a couple of things that are important for consideration. It's always been part of their business model to have an outdoor play. When they started the process, they've never gone through an entitlement process of the city of Chandler. They don't understand what it means to go through a use permit process. It takes months and months, but they have a lease that they had to act on. So of course they commenced the lease with the full expectation that the outdoor use will be part of the process, but always since the beginning has there been an expectation, part of their business model, to have this use in there. I certainly understand and appreciate the comments raised by the neighbors, and I appreciate the due diligence on this and their interest in the matter. When I read the petition that was submitted, I certainly understand why 142 people would sign something like this. If I said, come to my door, I might have signed it as well. Some of the things that were interesting there was that this is going to have potential. The potential for groundwater contamination was one of the facts that were highlighted in the letter. Health and sanitation concerns, equitable losses, and noise pollution. But what I know is those aren't fact-based. And the facts tell a different story. I can't dispute the facts of a noise study that was conducted on the property by an acoustical engineer. I can't ignore the fact that a train activity occurs in the area. I can't ignore the fact that there's a basis school next door that has outdoor play and orchestra practice. These are the ambient conditions. I do believe it's a benefit to the community, and the community has to be looked at not just what's on the north, the east, the west, but Chandler as a community does benefit from this use, including some residents that live within that area. There are a number of uses that can be loud and concerning in commercial shopping centers. This is the one before you today, but you have experience working with other CUP requests. As I mentioned, bars, outdoor patios, liquor licenses, special events. And every time there's a consideration regarding what the actual facts are and what the mechanisms are to enforce it. I know that on occasion, I think as you mentioned, there may be some sites that don't have an outdoor component. I don't know the reasons why one does and what doesn't. I don't know the reasons why one city approves it and another doesn't. But I do appreciate why the Chandler has a zoning ordinance that provides a mechanism for a use like this to exist. And most important, a public hearing that prescribes conditions and stipulations. That's the governing part of this, because if at any point they are non-compliant, it's revoked even if that's before the 1-year mark. I do appreciate that we have gone significant direction to reduce hours. As I read one of the emails that came in, something to the effect of pets outdoor all the time. What we're proposing is very reasonable. A brief moment in the morning, hour and a half, and in the afternoon, and respectfully, only 2 hours over a 48-hour weekend. The outdoor play is a necessary component to what we're doing, and I'd urge your support of this matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Any further questions for Adam?
Quick one.
Commissioner Colton.
Adam, sorry. Can you address some of the comments that was made by the neighbors in regards to deceitful aspects or why they feel lied to? Quite notably, the I thought, and I might be wrong, but I thought in the original packet, there was a letter from the school. I might have been wrong though, so please correct me if I am.
Sure, and my involvement in this case has been 3 weeks or so, so I don't know what statements have been made previously, and I don't know the substance of those conversations. So I can't say I can answer all those questions. I do know that they've had good discussions with the basis school, and they've had positive discussions with Alamo until more recently, because they were approached by Kyle. Both of those organizations have decided that they now want to remain neutral, whereas originally they were very supportive. So I think at a certain point, if you're a business and you're next door residential area, you want to make sure you maintain the business relationship with the folks next door. So it doesn't surprise me that at the end of the day, they prefer to stay neutral. But I do know that there was expressions of support from them. In fact, I think the Alamo folks provided a letter previously. So.
We need, let's go ahead and, Adam has the floor. We need to leave it.
It's also
Thank
worth
you, be
noting.
respectful.
It's also worth noting, like the example of Houston. Houston is a unique city that has no zoning regulations. And that sort of highlights the incompatibility of some of these uses at different times. And the city doesn't have an enforcement mechanism to do away with those uses. It's also worth noting, I think on the letter that he provided from Houston, that was a different facility before it was Doctopia. So I don't know if it was designed or created particularly by them. I do know that we have disease protocols. We have cleaning sanitation protocols because there is DEG below, aggregate below the turf. It can percolate into the ground rather than drain out to a street. There's no stormwater drains nearby. So the idea that this would somehow contaminate groundwater was something that never heard before in my life. I do know that Dogtopia has other facilities in Scottsdale and Arcadia, and I don't know what was said about the Arcadia one, but I do know there's some apartments next to it, and I do know there's homes next to the other facilities as well. And anybody, whatever, regardless of type of renter or homeowner you are, still has a right to complain about a use or a noise, and those complaints haven't registered, at least with the ones that we've surveyed here for you today.
Thank you, Adam. Commissioner Everly.
Yeah, through the chair. I think your clients are fine people, and I like what they're trying to do on the inside. The hang up I have, it's the same hang up we talked about, is that we've gone from 46 people to 146 people that don't think it's a good idea, and they are your immediate neighbors here. And so to me, I think there's something that has to be overcome before I could vote yes on it.
Sure, Mr. Greeley, based on the timing of when those petitions were collected and our offer to reduce the noise and the additional absorption panels, I'm assuming that most of those petitions were signed before we had made significant concessions to that end.
Okay. Well, please, Adam has the floor, and then we're going to be closing the floor off. And
I know at a minimum, the first set of 42 were before that. That concession was relatively new, and I think after my involvement, I said we need to find ways to be more responsive.
Thank you.
no, right now, we're following the process. Okay. So, any more comments or questions, and then we're going to be closing the floor.
Chairman, sorry, commissioners, can I just make a clarification on the numbers in terms of the petition? Seems there's a little bit of confusion.
Okay.
So with the original packet, the memo and the numbers were based on households. So there were 48 households that signed the petition, whereas this most recent memo is based on unique individual signatures. And I can't verify, I don't have a way to completely verify, but it appears that there are 111 households that signed the most recent petition. So 48 to 111.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and close the floor. We're going to have some discussion, and then we'll be taking a vote on the item. Any comments or?
Through the vice chair. One of the challenges that I always look at with, or try and always look at with neighborhood compatibility is kind of along the lines of what Commissioner Kimball brought up earlier. This is a symbiotic relationship. Both sides have to work together. And I'm just not seeing where, I see where the applicant has come in and shortened things, tried to listen to some of the neighbors, tried to back off on their hours, spent money on sound studies, whereas the neighbors have maintained a very hard line. And being a good neighbor is a two-way street. And I just don't see that happening here. What I will say is I have actually been taking my dogs to Dogtopia since they opened, which as a resident of Chandler, I am fully able to utilize any business and service as any other citizen is. Part of that is I've watched the owners. I've watched the care of the animals. I have watched they have cameras in every room. When a dog does his business, it is immediately, literally within seconds, cleaned up, sanitized, mopped, whatever needs to be done, it's taken care of. I have witnessed dogs wrestle, bark, maybe in some cases even maybe it's heavy play, maybe it's fighting. Those dogs are separated very quickly. I can't imagine it would be any different being outside. And I think this is a good use. I think this is a very good business with a very conscientious business owner. I have every right to believe that they would follow through and be that good neighbor and listen to challenges that would come up. And for that, I would support this. But I would also support the one-year stipulation to come back and revisit it and making sure that they're held accountable to be a good neighbor. With that, thank you.
Yeah, this is a really tough, this is a tough case for us. I mean, the Dogtopia and the owners have definitely, it's a good business. It's a good use. I think I'm still, I'm torn because of the same reasons, really not what was presented in the opposition too much today persuade me. It is just the distance for me, just the distance to the neighborhood. I know they're a really good operator. I think it's a really it's a growing area of Chandler, so it's going to be a busy place. But at this time, I'm not ready to support the outdoor permit myself, and so we're going to need to. At this time, we're going to take a vote, or just is there further comment?
Through the chair.
Yes. Yes.
I am in favor of the application that's before us tonight. I have listened to, all the speakers and the applicant and everything else, and I don't have an issue with the application. I think there's been a lot of stuff that the applicant has done as far as sound studies, soundproofing, different things like that. So, like I said, I am in favor of this. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion. If there's any other further comments.
The floor is closed.
The floor's been closed.
Yeah. Like to make a motion to recommend approval. Use permit case PLH 19-0021 Dogtopia.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
With stipulations. Okay,
Yes,
we have a
it is.
second, so. This time, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? So.
Carries 3-2.
Carries 3-2. And so as a recommending body, this will go into the city council. Staff, what What date is that? We're gonna need to keep the comments down and really respect, otherwise we'll hate to have security come in. We don't want that. Okay.
Folks, the floor is closed. The floor is closed, folks. If we need to have, folks, do we need to have Chandler Police come in? Please respect this process. You'll have another opportunity at Chandler City Council.
Okay.
And this
Stephanie?
city council hearing is scheduled for December the 12th.
December 12th. Thursday, December the 12th, at this location. City council will be hearing the case as well, okay? And we really appreciate everyone being respectful and do respect the process, because we're following it to a T as well, so. Okay, all right. So, this time, any directors' notes we need to go over?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Wasn't there a cancellation of a?
December.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the December 4th meeting has been canceled on the consent agenda.
Okay, that was already there, okay. Well, we here in the planning and zoning, we're gonna adjourn the meeting and wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving next week. And want to just take a moment really quick to tell my daughter happy birthday tomorrow, Violet Rose. She's 9 years old, so. All right. Thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.